Hello, future geniuses, and welcome back. Today we're going to talk about when the war really gets started, after the Battle of Dunkirk, after the invasion of France, after kind of that Germany now has taken over the majority of Europe. What actually happens from years 1941 up through 1945 to the end of the war? So over the next series of videos, we're going to talk about what's happening in Europe, what's happening in Africa, and what's happening in Asia. Because it's not just Europe. I mean, I think a lot of people sometimes think that World War I happens kind of in Europe alone. But there's happening really all over the world. So if you have any questions, make sure you include them in your notes. Today we're going to talk about what's happening in Europe at this time. So as the war breaks out, after the Battle of Dunkirk, the British forces are saved. They go back to the island of the United Kingdom, but the Germans are going to keep moving, and so they little after this stands in their way other than the Soviet Union. So they're going to, in 1940, they're going to send the Luftwaffe, or the German Air Force, to have a major offensive on the British Isles. German planes begin to bomb British and naval bases. They bomb their harbors, communication centers, war industries, cities themselves. I mean, it's a major war effort to try to cripple the British and bring them to their knees without actually having to invade the islands themselves. Now, the British, though, are pretty darn tough, and in September, the British actually retaliate by attacking Berlin, Germany. Hitler orders the Luftwaffe to begin a massive bombing of British cities as kind of a retaliation, and the British Royal Air Force responds by successfully attacking the German planes and destroying them. And at the end of September, Hitler calls off the invasion of Britain, mainly because of the British military's ability to stave off this massive bombing effort and to then retaliate and have an offensive effort themselves on Berlin. They do a really great job of hunkering down and of making sure that they keep themselves well protected, and are able to hold off the Germans. Now, the German, while fighting was occurring in northern France and Italy, other Allied forces began bombing Germany. And in 1942, after the Americans joined, the British and the Americans are going to have massive bombing campaigns over Germany. They're going to end up killing thousands of Germans and causing massive destructions. I mean, I will show you pictures in class, but there are literally whole cities that are just completely hollow shells from all of the bombing efforts that go on by the Allied forces during World War II. Now, after the Battle of Britain kind of happens and goes away, and while fighting's still going on, Hitler eventually, remember, he signed that Nazi-Soviet non-aggression pact because he knew he would eventually have to fight the Soviet Union, but he wanted to hold them off as long as possible. But in June 22nd, 1941, he breaks that agreement, and he begins what's known as Operation Barbarossa, which is the plan for Germany to invade the Soviet Union. Now, the Soviet Union, which is Russia, is a massive place, and the idea that Hitler could ever take it over is pretty fantastical if you think about it. But he was going to try, and so he takes 2 million troops of his, and he rapidly advances towards them. He ends up capturing over 2 million Soviet soldiers himself, those POWs, who are going to be sent to a lot of the death camps that many of the people from the Holocaust, those being persecuted in the Holocaust, are going to be sent to, and millions upon millions of them are going to die in captivity. Now, an early winter and a fierce Soviet resistance end up halting Germany's advance. Much like Napoleon when he tried to take over Russia, so too does Hitler fall to the brutal Russian winters. And in Russia, the Germans had advanced and captured most of eastern Russia, but the Germans ended up launching what's known as a siege on Leningrad that lasts 900 days. That's well over 3 years, or almost over 3 years if you think about it. And the people in the city run out of food and began eating horses, cats, dogs. They even ate bread made out of wallpaper paste. They would take the paste and make it like you would bread, and then eat that to be able to survive the long siege that was happening in Leningrad. Now, between 1942 and February 2nd, 1943, the Germans launch an air attack and launch an attack on Stalingrad, and the Soviets counterattacked. Stalin ordered a scorched earth policy, meaning the Soviets would burn anything the Nazis could use. If you remember back when we talked about the Civil War, this is not too far off of what Sherman is going to use when he invades the South on his march to the sea, where he's literally going to burn anything down that could be used as a way, as something to aid the war effort. The Soviets are going to do the same thing. They're going to have a scorched earth policy. So as the Germans are moving through Russia, all they are finding are burned farms, burn factories, burn weapons that the Soviets couldn't take with them. They're going to do everything possible to keep the Nazis from benefiting from their conquest. So the German troops were stopped, surrounded, and cut off from supply lines during the frigid winter, and were forced to surrender at Stalingrad. So what ends up happening is, as they're moving further and deeper into Russia, remember the Soviets are burning everything in their path. Eventually they're going to get so deep into Russia, they're going to be easily surrounded, and they're cut off at Stalingrad. And it's a very severe, not really beating, but it's a huge blow to the Nazis. The German forces are defeated at Stalingrad, and it was a major turning point of the war for the Soviets and for the Allies. And the Germans ended up losing about 300,000 troops in this battle. And by spring 1943, Hitler knew that the Germans would never be able to defeat the Soviet Union, and kind of just gives up on it, hoping to be able to win the war in other places and get other countries to capitulate, so then he could maybe turn his fighting again back towards the Soviet Union. So that's it for today. Make sure you have all of these in your notes. If you have any other questions, make sure you include those in your notes. I will see you all tomorrow. Have a great rest of your night. Bye-bye.